Hello everyone, my name is Daniel and I'm a programmer and an artist. This video is about how you can use the build cut holes modifier for my geometry node assets. To use build cut holes, we will need two things, an object that needs holes cut in it and a collection of objects to cut it with. For a first example, I will simply add two cubes and resize them a bit. The first cube will be the cutter and the second will be the wall or whatever it is that needs a hole in it. I'll move the cutting cube into a new collection and name that collection cutters. Then I will add a build cut holes modifier onto the object that I want to cut the holes into. It will complain about an empty output. To fix that, we first need to select a collection of cutting objects. However, we still get nothing as a result because we also need to assign a cutting material. Before we can do that, we should create the cutting material and assign it to the cutting mesh. I like to name it cutter and make it a transparent sort of wireframe shader. To do that, you'll also have to tweak the transparency options for the material settings, setting it to clip and no shadows. Once we have a material, we can select the build cut holes modifier and assign that material to the cutter material parameter. When it's set up like this, build cut holes will behave like a difference boolean modifier, except that the interior faces will also be deleted. However, since we don't usually want holes in our walls, let's edit our cutter mesh and add a little frame to it. We'll also need to add a second material to it and assign that to the new frame. Then I will just hide the cutting object so that it's easier to see the wall. The part that has the cutter material assigned to it will always cut a hole in the wall, and everything else can be added to the modifier result by checking the append cutter geometry checkbox. If you uncheck the realize box, the modifier will add the instances from the cutting collection rather than converting them into a mesh. This isn't an option that you'll probably use in Blender very often, as the instances will not have the cutting mesh removed from them, but it can be very useful if you're trying to export your structure to a game engine without freezing all of the windows into the final mesh. You can watch the video on my BAsset tools for an example of how I do that for Unity. That's it for the general settings, but there's still the tag feature, which I left for the end. So rather than using a collection to provide the geometry that will be doing the cutting, we could instead use geometry that is already in our object and select it with a tag. So let's delete our examples here and go over to the wall that we have from the Build Walls Face Project and Instance on Faces videos. If we add a cutting cube to the windows that we made for the Instance on Faces video, we can then use those windows to cut holes in the wall. So I will add a cutting material to the windows and model a box that represents the negative space where there should be a hole. Then on the wall object, I will add a build cut holes modifier. This causes the windows to disappear because the default cutter tag is instance on faces, but if we append the cutter geometry to the result, we will get them back. And if we select the cutter material, then the modifier will cut holes in the wall, and we can still edit them and move them around to make duplicates using the faces from the Face Project video, and we can change which window is instance for the instance on faces modifier, and then the build cut holes will cut the hole in the wall wherever the window happens to be. And that's about it for the build cut holes modifier. If you really want to take this to the next level, every time you model a window or a door or whatever, you can add a cutting box to it and save it as an asset in an asset library. And then you'll have a library of parts that you can just drag and drop into your scene to add details to your buildings in really cool ways. Anyway, in the description there are a bunch of links. You can visit my website where there are more details about all of my modifiers. I have a Discord server that you're welcome to join, and there are links to where you can purchase my geometry node assets if you'd like to do that. That's all I've got for this one. Thanks for watching.